Hey folks, this is a video about replacing the fan on a new light that a lot of churches are using. It's from a Chinese company called SHEHDS, and these are $90. Back in the day, the equivalent of that, in fact, right now, if you find the equivalent from USA Made thing, it starts around $400. A lot of churches are finding these are kind of working. The color rendition is not quite as high as you would get in a $400 fixture or a little bit better fixture. But in the real world, I think a lot of churches are feeling like it's close enough. It's good enough in practical ways to be worth working with. The one downside to this light, there's a couple downsides. The biggest downside is that the built-in fan in this $90 fixture is so stinking loud. So this video is going to be about how to replace the fans on this. I've seen folks talk about how to do this in Reddit groups, and I think they're doing it in an unwise way and maybe making their life more complicated than they need to be. So yeah, let's get into it. All right, so I am here in this church. We are actually taking down the fans that we installed because they're loud enough that we wanted to do something about it. So I'm gonna show you the entire process. Let's check the camera, make sure it'd be better for you if I put that over there. All right. I'm going to show you the entire process. This is not difficult to do. If you have any comfort with a screwdriver, you can basically do this. So I'll just show the whole process, and I'll kind of talk about it as I'm doing it. And if you need to skip ahead, great. You just skip to whatever part of this video you need. We remove these 4 screws that are holding the back panel on. And then we also remove the 4 screws that are holding the fan guard on. All right, now pull this back. Kind of gently. There are cables connected inside. And turn it around. Okay. All right, so we have our fan, and then the cable goes into this bundle of wires that's been bundled up with a zip tie and eventually terminates in that little connector there. If you've ever built your own computer or anything like that, it's the same kind of connectors. And in fact, this looks a lot like a computer fan, which is why a lot of people are using computer fans to do this job. And I don't think that's the smart thing to do. So I clipped the zip tie off. I'm just gonna throw that to the side. I'm gonna pull this out just so you can see where this goes. Connects right there. And when you pull yours apart, it'll be very, very obvious where it connects to. Okay, so I have bought these fans that honestly look pretty stinking similar. And I've got a link for those. I'll put a link for those in the video so that if you want to get them, you can. Let's talk about why these fans are better than what most people are using. Most people in Reddit forums and whatnot are buying PC fans and making them work. So mostly these SHEHDS lights are powering the fans at 24 volts and computer fans are 12 volts. So what people are doing is they're installing a 12-volt fan and then also a 12-volt fan, and then also installing a transformer to reduce it from 24 volts down to 12 volts, which works. I mean, it kind of works, but it's not providing enough power for the fan. I think you're going to worry about heat over time. And maybe more to the point, there's a simpler way to do this. And I think the only reason people are doing the 12-volt thing is because there's a lot of computer fans that are that are designed to be very, very quiet, right? But I just found a quiet 24-volt fan, and so it's a lot more simple. So you saw, let me tell you what I've been doing while I've been talking. I didn't unplug the fan, I cut the fan cables. There's 2 cables, there's a red cable and a black cable. I cut them, and now I'm stripping the red cable, and I'm stripping the black cable. It's actually red with a black stripe, right? I'm just using wire strippers. So actually that's the hardest part of this. If you've never used wire strippers, you might have to practice a little bit before you do that, right? So those are exposed. And then I'm taking these Wago, what are they called? Wago? These connectors, and I'm using these. These are really cool. If you've never used these before, you might want to watch a video on these. They're really cool. They're an easy way to combine two wires. And then, so I clip the red wire in and pull it a little. Yep, nice and strips, nice and snug. I'll do it with the black wire. Stick it in. Clip it down, and it's also nice and snug. They need a little more space here. Okay, separate those a little. All right, cool. So then I put in the new fan, and I'm also going to cut some of this cable because mostly I just don't want a lot of cable flopping around inside of this that's going to land on the heat sink or create problems, 5 years down the road. So again, I strip this cable and strip this cable. Okay, now in my case, the fan doesn't have a red and a black cable. It has a red and a blue cable, but red goes to red. Red on the fan goes to red on the fixture. And then the other thing connects to the other option, right? You don't even have to totally understand it to know there's only two options. But I'll tell you, blue, at least in my case, they changed this from model to model, but blue goes to the black. Cool. All right, that's it. Now we're gonna screw it all back together. And actually, sometimes that's the hard part, is how you hold the fan guard and the fan, get it all lined up while you're also putting a screw in. Ugh. There we go. The first one's the hard one. And I've got my little screwdriver here. Tighten that up halfway so I can do the next one. There it is. Got it. Cool. Now that's going to hold everything in place. The second one's... I'm just putting it back together. Yeah, so again, I think my contribution here, which I also saw somebody say on Reddit, I didn't think this up, is to buy the 24-volt fan from a company that sells electronic supply called Mouser Electronics. I'll put the link to the one I used, and it is measurably more quiet. Let's talk about volume before the rest of this is just putting screws in. You don't need to see me do that. So when I measure the volume difference, it's only 7, 8, 10 decibels quieter, which doesn't sound like a lot until you remember that 6 decibels means it's half the volume as you measure an actual physical wave in the universe. And 10 decibels seems to the human ear like half the volume. So 10 decibel drop is pretty good. Then when you remember, you're not listening to one fixture. You often have 4, 8, 10 fixtures in your church sanctuary. So dropping the volume 10 decibels is a huge difference. Here in this church, I just made the change on one side of the sanctuary versus the other, and then just stood in the middle. And one side of the sanctuary, you can't hear anymore. And the other side still sounds super loud. So yeah, these fans are great. And once you get them installed, I think you're gonna really see the benefit. All right, I hope that was helpful.